What if every high stakes meeting, whether with investors, partners, or top hires, ended with your audience genuinely excited to work with you? Because I've seen over 124 founders go from ignored to unforgettable by shifting how they pitch and answer questions. And in doing so, helping them raise over $250 million. So in this video, I'm going to show the 3 techniques that separate funded founders from everyone else so you can get real momentum, not just polite applause when actually building your business. But first, I just want to zoom out for a second so you don't make the same mistakes that I see 99% of founders make. And that is, like, why do some founders walk into some meetings with investors, chasing them and making the fundraise so easy, while other founders get the classic, it's too early, we'll be in touch, and you obviously never hear back from them? Do you think that it's just luck, or there's different, or the investors are not really helping in any way? But it's just not true. It's not just luck. And it's not even just about having the best product or about the best traction. It really comes down to the 3 techniques that I'm going to talk about today in how and what you speak about. And these same techniques has been a core part of me seeing the transformation of over 124 different founders from forgettable to fundable purely because they master these 3 techniques. And if you master these, suddenly you're not just pitch number 20 to an investor or a customer. They'll remember you, they'll trust you, and really be connected to you. So what are they? Let's break down the 3 moves that separate funded founders from the rest, starting with the one thing that makes you 12 times more memorable than any stat or slide. So number 1. So I want to start with the first big shift that you need to be thinking about with every single conversation you have, especially with fundraising. And when I speak to founders, most of you think investors are just looking for numbers and bullet points and traction, and that once you get the business sorted, everything will be fine. But that's just not how fundraising works. It's never going to be true. And as a VC, I knew that myself. The founders that I ever invested into, it wasn't about the stats they had. And it shows in the data. Stats just get forgotten. But the thing is, stories stick. The founders who master storytelling are just going to walk out of meetings with investors remembering them for months, whether it's going to be for this fundraise or even the future fundraise you do. They're going to remember you and they're going to want to speak to you more. Now, I want to just show you why this matters by actually using some data. So there's a great book called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. And they conducted an experiment with Stanford students. And the students were asked to prepare a 1-minute speech on whether or not non-violent crime is a serious problem. So on average, the student used 2.5 statistics in their 1-minute speeches, and only 1 in 10 students actually told a story. So they had this amazing data set of people using the same topic, talking about the same thing in 1 minute, but different ways in which they were doing it. And when it came to actually remembering the presentation 10 minutes later, only 5% of the audience could recall any individual statistic, but 63% of the audience could remember the stories. And if we extrapolate that, and it's been shown over a multitude of different studies of that as well, stories are about 12 to 13 times as memorable as statistics. And when we realize that, you want to be using the storytelling to tell your statistics. Where founders go wrong is they're like, I just need all this data, and they dump data onto investors. And I had this all the time when I was a VC. They just get all of this stats, just put stat. And they just switch off and they lose everything. And you don't remember anything. And they don't remember why they should care about you, or really you being memorable of that being them being like, wow, okay, this is the best founder I've ever spoken to. And it's really easy to tell you that you need to do stories, right? But how do you do this? Well, look, I think of it in 3 different steps of how you actually implement using storytelling into the conversations that you have. So number 1, I think of it as a bank of stories. So I want you to sit down and actually think deeply about which areas or stories do we have that can talk about how you started your business, the origins of it, the insights that you've gained, any type of insight that you have that's really unique and different. What was the story behind how you unearthed that? Things such as your first customer, your last customer, the most impactful aspect of that. how you understood your difference in product. You can create 5 to 10 different stories that happened and how that affected you, or you learned certain things, or why you changed your product in a certain way. And you can create these bank of stories that you have them, so that you have this table I always use, or an Excel document of all of these different stories that you can then leverage. That's the first thing. We need to just get all of these stories outside of your head into actually a document that you can say, these are all the stories I have. And once you start to do that, the biggest benefit of doing this is as you go through your journey as a founder, the conversations that you have, you're going to start to find new stories. And once you've done it first time, you'll then start to build more and more stories as you go in. Now, the second step is actually using investor Q&As. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about an FAQ that you'll send to investors. I want us to actually start building out, how do we answer questions? Which are the major questions that you've been asked? And then from that point, if we're organized in how we're answering them, we can start to think about, and we've obviously got a bank of stories as well, we can then use the bank of stories into our question. So this question, investor asked me, why do you think your product is a 10x improvement compared to everyone else? Great. I can go to my bank of stories. I can say, okay, which stories or story makes the most sense for me? And how do I start that question with that story? Or how do I implement that story into how I answer this question before I give any data point? The third one, which is super important, is for everything in narrative, I want you to test and iterate. You can't just do all this work and think about the stories or think about how you answer questions without recording yourself, looking back, taking practice calls, really understanding which stories investors care about, which ones they don't care about, which ones do we want to lean on the most, which ones do we want to pull back, where does the data point fit within the story? If you don't test and iterate, you can't know this stuff. And the thing is, stories make you unforgettable. But even the best story falls flat if you start getting defensive. So I want to start talking about turning those tough questions into real conversations so that we can really focus on collaboration over combat. And that's really what technique number 2 is. So I want to give you an example of when I was a VC. So I was meeting with a founder. I really liked the founder, in fact. I thought he was really good. But as we were moving into the first meeting, as we had this call, it started quite well. I was confused about some parts of his business and was really just trying to understand a little bit more about, at this point, it was how he was thinking about distribution, okay? Now, when I started asking these questions, the first thing he started to do was over-defending himself. He was treating my viewpoint as completely wrong, and it could have been wrong. I'm not saying it was completely right, but he was treating what I was saying as wrong and was over-defending what he was trying to say. And what happened when he went into a defensive aspect is he was basically combating with me on why I was wrong and why he was right and how I was an idiot, basically. And because of that, he then started to defend every single part of the business about how it affected this point and this point and this point and this point. And then he just went on tangent and tangent, over defending himself at every single point. And fundamentally what happened is he went from being, I thought was a great founder and at the beginning really good, it came across as a little bit insecure about what he was trying to do and fundamentally just less credible as a founder. And I saw this for most of the founders I ever met as a VC, and most of the founders I speak to, it's the same. You're treating these meetings as I need to get investment there and then. And because of that, you come across as defensive and you're trying to just win the argument. Investors just switch off when that happens. So a real common mistake of that is you're treating these questions as attacks. But I don't want you to treat investor meetings or any meetings you have as attacks. They're not attacks. Really reset your mindset about what a VC is thinking about when they're asking you these questions and jumping in these calls. And these points of these calls are not to do a gotcha of why you're bad or why everything's going to be wrong. They're genuine curiosity of whether or not they want to invest into you. And when you think about that mindset of this is a curiosity thing, this is someone who is trying to understand my viewpoint on things or putting their own viewpoint on something and understand it. And the best way of doing that is doing it in this way. So the first thing I want you to do is I just want you to pause. After every investor question, just pause for a second. And what it will do is it will reset your viewpoint on things and give you a little bit of chance to think about, okay, what were they actually trying to ask me here? The second thing I want you to do is if you don't really understand what they're trying to get at, or you do think it's a little bit combative, you don't have to go straight into a question. I want you to ask a clarifying question before answering. Say something along the lines of, so just so I understand, is this what you're trying to get at? Or what's the reason for why you're asking that question? Is it because of this? You can ask and really understand their perspective and really just be genuinely empathetic to what their viewpoint is. And that's the core part of what we're trying to do here, is you want to understand the investor's perspective first. And once you understand that, then you can share your view confidently and calmly because you know what they're trying to understand. And then it naturally creates a two-way discussion. And the beauty of making a two-way discussion is it creates a collaborative environment where you're talking about the positives and you're talking about the things that you can do to make it improve, rather than a debate and a competitive attack of each of your viewpoints. And what happens there is then you go into the risks. And as soon as you go into the risks, that's where the investors are going to switch off and they're going to say no to you. But if you carry on staying in that collaborative environment and having a great discussion about where you want to go, that's where the future of the vision happens. And that's where investors can feel excited by what you're doing. So that's number two. But to truly stand out, you need to show you're at a turning point. And from the point of the business, the inflection point investors are hunting for. So point number three, I always think of this analogy of an escalator. You're stepping onto the escalator just before it moves. And once it starts rising, anyone not on it has to take the stairs to the 50th level. So you're already on, but the investor has 1 second to step on too before they're never going to be able to go back onto that escalator. And that's a great analogy of how you should be thinking about building your business and what you talk about, because it's that second of moment the investor has where they feel like they're going to lose out that really builds out an aspect of where investors love what you're doing. Because when it comes to fundraising, investors are looking at what your future looks like. And as soon as you show the negatives of your current world, they can never see that future potential. So whenever we're thinking about fundraising, we need to be thinking about what inflection points do you have where you're going to grow so much and be so much better that you're going to leave these investors to dust, and this is the last chance that they can get onto that escalator. And that's why you need to always make sure you're showing everything you've done in a positive light, and that right now is the exact inflection point where this company is going to be amazing. You know, think about it in this. Let's say that you had low traction, which caused you to pivot. Well, you can actually say, well, no, we pivoted and we've actually found that we've have amazing amounts of customer love and we really think that we found product market fit. If it's something like the fundraise had failed before you stopped, it's no, we really wanted to understand our product customers in a much better way, and we've actually found this one thing, or we've changed our product, we've changed this, and it's actually really working well. Or in the fundraise itself, the fundraise is going exceptionally well, and we're going to get a really big round, and because of that big round, these are the things we're going to be able to do, and then we're going to raise a massive round in the future because of it, and investors feel like this is the last chance I can have. Those inflection points are what's going to build out how investors feel about you and whether they feel like you're going to be that amazing founder that's going to build $1 billion business, because right now you're at the cusp of growth. You're at the cusp of where no one else is going to be able to touch this. And from an ego point of view, they felt, wow, okay, I was the one who invested into Uber or Canva or whoever it was before they got big. So let's just wrap this up. You've just learned the 3 moves that separate forgettable founders from the ones investors chase. You need to tell stories, not just stats. Treat every question as a chance to collaborate, not a fight. And always show you're at some type of inflection point in your business where the future looks even brighter than the past. But every founder's journey is different. So if you're stuck on any of these, or you've got a question about pitching, fundraising, or just want to know how to make your next meeting count, or really focusing on how to meet investors, whatever it is around that, just drop it in the comments below. I read every one, and I'll jump in to help you out there and then, and also build out a much more structured answer for you as well. But if you want to go deeper, you don't want to miss my next video, where I'm breaking down the 3 steps to actually answer investor questions in the right way so that you know exactly how to answer them. I'll see you in the next video.